everyone. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I use my sourdough starter and how I store it when I'm not using it. And I put mine in the refrigerator because there's just myself and my husband here at home, and I usually only bake once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. So this is my sourdough starter. It's been in the refrigerator for around a week. And as you can see, after I fed it the last time, I put a rubber band where it was, and it has come all the way up to this line here, and then it has fallen some over the week in the refrigerator. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of it for a recipe that requires discharge, which is what this is. This is like a fallen starter, so it's time to feed it again. But before that, I'm going to take some off and make something, some cookies with that. So what I'm going to do now is point the camera down so you can see what I'm doing. Hopefully. I am going to bake bread this evening. Before I go to bed, I'm going to start some bread. So what I want to do is feed my starter. And the recipe that I'm using for my cookies calls for about 60 grams of discharge. So I'm going to stir this up and weigh on my scale here 60 grams of discharge. That's a little over, so we'll take some out. Okay, close enough. That's 70. It's close enough. And that's about 2 ounces. If I took out 70, it's a little more than 2 ounces. It's probably 2 1/4 ounces of starter. So now I'm going to feed my starter. I'm going to zero out my scale. And I want to tell you that what I do if I'm going to bake earlier, like in the next 3 or 4 hours, I use warm bottled water. I always feed my starter with a bottled water because there's impurities and stuff in tap water or well water that I find it makes the starter really lazy. So I use purified water, about 95 degrees I heat it up to, and I measure it with my little digital thermometer. So I'm going to go about 2 1/2 ounces, which is what I took off. 2 1/4, 2 3/8, that's fine. I'm going to zero it out, and I'm going to add 2 3/8 of all-purpose flour to that. Then I'm going to stir it up and readjust the rubber band to where it sits now and put it on the back of my stove in a warm spot in my kitchen for approximately 3 to 4 hours. And then before I go to bed, I can start my bread recipe, which is done in like 2 or 3 phases. And I'll video that for you so you can see how to make a sandwich loaf. The recipe that I use calls for 2 loaves, but today I'm only going to do 1 loaf, and well, actually it'll be tomorrow, but I'm going to do the 2 loaf recipe. But when it gets time to making the loaves, I'll make 1 loaf for sandwich bread, and I'll roll out some cinnamon rolls with the other loaf. Okay, so I'm going to come back around 7 or 8 o'clock tonight and show you where we're at. Okay, I'm back again. It's been about 3 1/2 hours in my kitchen. And as you can see where the rubber band is, my starter has more than doubled. It's actually escaping out the top here. So that means I'm ready to bake, or I'm ready to start my bread dough. So for this particular bread that I'm making, it's called basically just a sandwich loaf. I'm going to start by putting 1 cup of filtered water in my bowl and 1 cup of active starter and 1 1/2 cups of flour. And I'm going to mix that all up and then I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap and a tea towel on top of it and set it on the counter for until the next morning. So I'm going to flip my camera here so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. All right, so let me get my water. I got my scale. Well, actually, this one's not by grams, so I'm just going to do it by cups here. So I need 1.5 cups of, well, I'm going to show you. First I'm going to put the water in because there's like a little trick that you show that your starter is floating on the water. That means it's good, it's active, it's ready to go. So we're going with 1 cup of water in the bowl. Since I don't need the scale, I can take the scale away. And I need 1 cup of starter. And that is very active. Lots of bubbles in there. Really good. You can see that. It's very active. Okay, so it's going to go in on top of the water. Just put a little bit in, and you'll see, well, it's such a voluminous thing that it's kind of hard to see, but it's floating on top of the water. So that means we are good to go. And then we're going to do 1.5 cups of flour. And we're going to beat this up. Once you got that all beat up, I take a spatula and just kind of clean the edges of the bowl. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to cover it with some saran wrap, and then I'm going to put a tea towel on top of it on my stove until tomorrow morning. Come back and we'll start over again. Okay, I got the saran wrap on the bread dough and a tea towel on top of it, but I wanted to mention that after I took the volume out of my starter, I fed it again, and I fed it with 3 ounces of all-purpose flour and 3 ounces of filtered water. I put the rubber band back where the level is, on where it's at right now, and I'm going to stick it back in the refrigerator because I'm not going to use it again for a while. So I'll bring it out tomorrow when we're doing the next step on the bread and show you how much it's come up. Good morning, everyone. I hope y'all had a nice sleep last night. I'm going to jump in here and continue on with my sandwich bread to the next step. I wanted to show you last night when we left off, I had fed my starter and put it in the refrigerator, and I wanted to quickly show you what happened overnight in the fridge after I fed the starter. As you can see, the rubber band is where we were after I fed, and then this morning it's here. It'll probably rise up almost to the lid in the refrigerator, and then slowly as the week progresses, it'll drop down some until the next time I need it to bake. Okay, so good girl. She's going back in the fridge. Okay, for our next phase here, we need to grab the water, flour, and starter that we put in the bowl last night, covered it with plastic and a tea towel. It's back here on top of my stove. And I'll have you take a look at this here. If you can see all those nice bubbles, smells delicious, okay? I'm gonna put this into my KitchenAid just because it's a little bit easier for me. I don't have the strength in my hands anymore like I used to, so I'm gonna let the KitchenAid do the first part of the mixing and kneading for me. And then I have a Silplat sheet set here that I roll my cookies and cinnamon rolls and stuff out on that I'll use to hand knead in the final portion of flour. I want to get as much of this out of here as I can. Don't want to waste anything, right? Okay, we're good. Okay, so I think I forgot to mention last night that when I do the bread, I use King Arthur bread flour. When I feed my starter, I use all purpose. Okay, so here is my King Arthur. We're going to add now 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of melted butter that is a little bit cool. You don't want to add anything into your bread now that's over, I'd say maybe 95 to 100 degrees temperature. I've also warmed my milk. I got 1.5 cups of milk here that I put in the microwave for like 20 seconds, and it's about 80 degrees. I just wanted to take the chill off so that it doesn't have to sit so long before it starts to rise. So we've got 1/4 cup sugar, 1/8 of a cup melted butter, which is 2 tablespoons, 1.5 cups milk, and now we're gonna put in 2 teaspoons of sea salt, into the pool there. And the recipe calls for 4.5 to 5.5 cups flour. And this is where the experience comes in. If you made bread before, you know not to put all the flour in the recipe at the get-go. You always hold back about 1 cup, because depending on what time of year it is and how moist the atmosphere is going to affect the flour and how it takes on liquid. So I'm going to start now with 4 cups of bread flour and put that on my KitchenAid and see how we go, okay? One, 2, 3, 4. And I just use my spatula here to kind of get it moving so that when I put it in the KitchenAid, I don't have a big giant dust of flour that hits me in the face. I can already tell by looking at it that I am going to need to add more flour, but I will do it after I run the KitchenAid for a little bit, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like before I dump it onto my Silplat and add the final bits of flour while I'm hand kneading it. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, took me about, 5 minutes, 4 minutes to incorporate another maybe 1 cup of flour into the dough. And this is what it will look like when I'm about ready to dump it on my Silplat and incorporate the rest of the flour by hand. I'm gonna knead it and I'm gonna show you that. My KitchenAid is a 4.5 quart, it's an older machine, and it basically will just marginally do 2 loaves of bread at a time. So if I had a larger capacity mixer, hint for Christmas, Michael Murphy, I would be able to do the entire kneading in the machine. But because my machine will only handle so much dough, I have to incorporate the final part by hand here. So I'm gonna dump this on the silplat. I'm gonna tilt my camera down so that you can see what I'm gonna do for the last bit of it. Okay, hopefully that gives you a good picture here. I'm gonna put a little bit of flour down here. And the reason why I use the silplat is because it's a little bit clean. It's cleaner when I go to clean up the kitchen. It's just easier for me. If you have a Formica or a granite countertop, you can do this directly on your countertop, but you're gonna have to flour the surface of it. Otherwise it's gonna stick, and you really don't want that. This is kind of what I would call a medium consistency dough. It's not super soft like some of your high hydration sourdoughs. Because it has the milk and the butter in it, it's a little bit of a different feel of dough. And I'm just basically gonna start pushing it away from me and pulling it towards me in quarter turns like this. And if it starts to stick, I just kind of put a little bit more flour on my hands. I think I'm pretty much there. I don't really want to incorporate too much more flour into this. And as you can see, you've got a nice smooth dough ball already, but I'm gonna do it a little bit more because this is how I say my morning prayers, okay? Actually, this looks really good. It's still soft. It's got enough moisture in it, so it's not going to be a big hunk, hockey puck, dry loaf of bread. But it's not too wet. So now we're going to go into the proofing phase here, okay? And I proof mine in a Camco bucket here. And I don't grease the plastic because my dough scraper gets it all out when it's time to get it out, so I don't really need to grease it up. But if I was going to use a glass bowl, I would probably put a little bit of butter or something on there so that when I go to take it out, it comes out easier. And to keep this from the surface tension here, this surface skin drying out, I'm going to put my plastic shower cap back on it and cover it with my tea towel. But if you take note, I'm like at 1.5 quarts here. So I want to wait till at least it comes up to 3 quarts. So that usually takes in my kitchen, I don't know, 3 to 6 hours, just depending on the temperature of the kitchen during that time. So this is going to go back on the stove, and when we come back, we're going to make 1 bread loaf, and I'm going to roll out the other part of it into some kind of a roll. I saw a really cool recipe for raspberry filled cinnamon rolls, and since we grow our own berries here and I have a whole freezer full of berries, I might make some of that raspberry filling, and instead of cinnamon rolls, I might do a raspberry roll, which sounds really nummy, so I might try that. Anyway, I'll be back here and go to the next step here as soon as my dough has at least doubled in this bucket. All right, see you soon. Okay, we're back for the next step. It's been about 4 hours, and I think we're about doubled in our bucket, so let's pull the bucket and take a check. My oven has a proofing cycle, so I turn the proofing cycle on for about 10 minutes, then I turn it off and put my dough in my oven because I don't really need all that temperature to proof my dough. Just a little, I guess, little start. If your oven doesn't have a proofing cycle and your kitchen's really cold, you can use a couple cups of boiling water in a shallow pan on the bottom of your oven, and then put your dough a couple of inches above that and to the side, not directly in line, so that it kind of makes a steamy, warm environment for your dough to proof, okay? So we are definitely at 3, we're good to go. So what I'm gonna do now is dump this out, and I'm gonna move my camera so you can see here in just a second. Out we go. Boy, that smells good. Smells nice and sour. Put this down so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. All right, so I use my dough scraper to kind of move it on my board here. I don't want too much flour at this point. Just enough so that my hands and utensils don't stick to it. Okay, that's 1 pound, 13 ounces. And 1 pound, 14. So we'll take this one here, move it to the board, and depending on how moist my dough is, kind of makes me decide how I'm going to form my loaf. If this was pretty much wetter than this, I would do the typical crisscross like this, stitching it like that, and then rolling it towards me like this, which I'm still going to do that, but there's a whole bunch of different ways you can form a loaf. If I was going to put this in a baton and rise it, I would make it a round, but because I'm going to put it in a loaf pan, because it's for sandwich bread, I'm kind of shaping it into a rectangle. Okay, and the reason why I didn't use a lot of flour is because if you do that and then you make your form where the flour was, it kind of creates an air pocket, so you'll have holes in your bread, more holes than you want. I mean, sourdough is going to have some holes in it, but you don't want a bunch. This is my loaf pan, which I have greased with Crisco. You can use spray or whatever you want, but I do grease my loaf pans. Into the loaf pan, and I just kind of press it down a little bit like that, because it's going to rise up now and take up all that space. And then I put a little cap on it and proof it up so it doesn't touch, and set it back over by my oven. The other piece of dough, like I said this morning, is I'm going to try something a little bit different. And for this one, I am going to use a little bit more flour because I don't want it to stick. I'm basically trying to work out a rectangle. And I am definitely not about the perfection. I follow a lot of sourdough pages on my Facebook account, and some people really get crazy about, you know, the crumb, the proofing, the shape, how you score it. I just can't get too crazy about all that. I just want something that I can slap some butter on and it tastes fantastic. That's all I care about. My husband's in the other room laughing because he knows that's me. Okay, so if I was gonna do cinnamon rolls, what I do is just put a thin layer of butter on here and put my brown sugar and cinnamon on. But as I said earlier, I wanted to try this raspberry stuff. So what I did was I made a compote kind of out of about 1.5 cups of raspberries from my freezer with the juice of 1/2 of a lemon. And then I brought that to a simmer, and then I added in 1 heaping teaspoon of cornstarch to kind of thicken it up a little bit. And as you can see, there's a couple of blueberries that were in there. That just happened to be in my garden harvest, so it got frozen that way. But they won't hurt anything, they'll be delicious. So this is what we're gonna do today. And I'm gonna roll this towards me. So the part that's towards me, I'm not gonna bring my raspberry filling all the way to the end there. I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap, so I'll be able to close this with a little bit of a pinch technique, which I'll show you. Okay, so Bob's your uncle, that's it. So I'm just gonna bring this towards me. And it's gonna be a little goopy because this is a little goopier than cinnamon and sugar. And if it resists, I use my dough scraper to help me bring it along. And remember, we're not shooting for perfection here. We want something delicious to eat. We want something delicious to eat. So I'm gonna lift this up. Delicious. And pull it over, and pull it over. See how I did that with the dough scraper? And then I'm gonna pinch here to close. It won't close where there's goop. So trying to get over the goompy part so it kind of closes a little bit. Okay, so I use dental floss to cut my cinnamon rolls. Okay, got a pan that I've got lined with parchment. I think this is either an 8x8 or a 9x9 square. I'm gonna go for, let me see, what am I gonna do here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rolls. So that's gonna be my goal. And sometimes I have to help it up a little bit so I can get the floss underneath it, because it'll stick to the dough. There we go. First one. And I am gonna use my dough scraper to get this in here, because it's very goompy. There we go. And I will show you once I get them all in here what it looks like. It's kind of a mess. Note to self, next time make the filling a little bit thicker. This is one of those experimental cooking experiences where you just don't know what's going to happen until you do it. Kind of what makes the thing fun. 3 more here, I think. Get under there. Get under there. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle here, people. But I'm going to make this 2. My hands are a mess here, so I'm having a little trouble. So we're just going to use this. Well, I'll laugh about this later. It'll either be really delicious or a total disaster, and I'll say, oh, I don't think I'll do that again. But that's okay. And I'm just going to plop the extra stuff on top. And we'll see how this goes. Let me wipe my hands really quick and I'll show you. What a goopy mess, right? But what the heck, I bet it's delicious. So I'm going to cover this with some plastic wrap and put it into my oven on the proofing cycle for about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I'll preheat my oven to 375. I'll take it out, preheat my oven to 375 and bake the loaf and the cinnamon rolls for anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. I'll have to keep an eye on the rolls, because they'll probably cook faster than the loaf. And then we'll come back after I take everything out of the oven. Okay, here we go. I wanted to jump on here and show you what everything looks like before I'm going to pop it into the oven. It's been about an hour and 45 minutes, and I've got my oven preheated to 375, and let's see what things look like. Here are the crazy raspberry rolls. Kind of crazy looking. I'm going to pop those in on 375 and set a timer for about 15 minutes. I'm thinking because of the fruit on top, I might have to put a little piece of aluminum foil over it for the last part of the bake, but we'll find out. And here's our sandwich loaf. And it has doubled in size. I'm going to give it a score. Just a diagonal 3 times. That's basically it. Very simple, and into the oven it goes. And I'll come back in about 30 minutes or so and show you what everything looks like. Okay, this is how it came out of the oven. The raspberry mess rolls puffed up and look perfect, and the bread is going to be delicious.